All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling Charlemagne. This guy, he's considered like the most important figure of the whole first millennium AD.
Wow, that's a big statement.
It is. But we're not just doing the textbook version here. We've got this amazing interview with Alessandro Barbero, a total Charlemagne expert.
Sounds like a good source.
He was talking to some history students, and they brought up some really cool perspectives.
So, what's the mission for this deep dive? Just who Charlemagne was?
It's more than that. We're looking at why he's so important. And get this, his story shows how history, religion, even the idea of Europe are all connected.
Yeah, I can see how that would be interesting.
Totally. And Barbero starts off with this real puzzle. He says that to the Byzantines, those Eastern Romans, Charlemagne becoming emperor in 800 AD, it was like the Alsi barbarian invasion.
The final one. That's ironic, considering he's shaping Western Europe.
Right. Makes you wonder if people saw him as a threat, like he was messing with the power balance. Did he change how people saw the old Roman Empire?
He must have shaken things up. Charlemagne had to balance leading those Frankish warriors, who basically thought they were better than the Romans.
Oh yeah, those Franks were tough.
But he also gets that Roman title that's powerful, prestigious.
Two worlds colliding. Barbarian roots, but with that Roman pull.
Exactly. And there's this story. Charlemagne goes to Rome. The Pope tells him, hey, dress like a Roman, you don't want to be laughed at.
No kidding. The most powerful guy in the West getting fashion tips from the Pope, it shows how much image mattered, even back then.
It really does.
But it's that tension, barbarian strength versus Roman legacy that runs through his whole reign.
And where does that begin?
Oh, it's a story full of twists. Starts with Charlemagne inheriting half the Frankish kingdom, which is already a lot.
That's impressive on its own.
Then, boom, his brother Carloman dies in 771 AD. And let's just say, historians are pretty suspicious about that death.
Died under mysterious circumstances. Classic sign of some shady politics going on.
Makes you think, how ambitious was Charlemagne? What was he willing to do?
And that ambition, it drove him to expand his power, right? He wasn't content with just the Franks.
You're telling me. Look at the Lombards in northern Italy. Pope's having trouble with them, calls on Charlemagne for help. Now, Charlemagne, devout Christian, he's got to help out.
But I bet he also saw a chance to grab some land.
Exactly. He conquers northern Italy, something the Pope probably didn't see coming. Talk about a smart move.
Shows how he was both a religious guy and a super strategic politician.
A recurring theme, for sure. And it really comes out in how he dealt with the Saxons.
The Saxons, those were some tough adversaries.
Tell me about it. 30 years of war. Charlemagne was determined to conquer them. And then there's this one battle, he makes 5,000 Saxon prisoners convert to Christianity.
Wow.
And those who refused, killed. It's a harsh reminder of how different things were back then.
Was he really that devout, or was it an excuse for expansion?
Hard to say. Faith or power or both. That's what makes him fascinating. But it's worth noting, his campaigns weren't always a win. He tries to take on the Moors in Spain, gets defeated at Roncesvalles Pass.
A setback for Charlemagne.
But before we get to that, Barbero says something interesting about these conversions. Back then, converting pagans to, one god, that was seen as modernizing them, like what the Arabs did with Islam.
So it wasn't just forcing religion, it was bringing them up to what was considered a better way of life.
Exactly. Makes you think about religion's role in culture and how progress was defined.
It really changes how you see things.
But about that Roncesvalles Pass defeat, you said it inspired the Song of Roland, that epic poem. How does the loss become legendary?
It's history getting rewritten. The first stories about Roncesvalles, they barely mention Roland. He was just another noble who died.
So how did he become the main hero?
Over time, the story grew. It's wild how someone minor becomes a legend. The Crusades probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Christianity versus Islam heating up, a heroic Christian warrior fighting the Moors, that would have been popular.
Exactly. Roland becomes this symbol of courage, dying for his faith, a rallying cry for the Crusades. It shows how stories change depending on what's happening when they're told. Like, we shape the past to fit our present.
For sure. But Roncesvalles goes beyond the Crusades. Barbero mentions Charlemagne and his paladins, those elite warriors, almost like knights, super loyal. They were popular in stories and even Sicilian puppet shows.
Wow, puppet shows. So, centuries later, people still love those adventure stories, and they become larger than life.
Definitely adds to the Charlemagne mystique. But let's talk about the event that made him truly famous. Becoming emperor on Christmas Day, 800 AD, changed Europe forever.
Imagine being there. St. Peter's Basilica packed, Charlemagne's praying, then bam, Pope Leo III crowns him Emperor of the Romans. What a scene.
It must have been shocking. As a challenge to the Byzantine Empire, they thought they were the real Romans?
A bold move. The West is a power player now. But whose idea was the coronation? Planned? Or did someone trick someone?
Big question. Barbero thinks it was planned, but maybe the Pope got sneaky, crowning Charlemagne while he was kneeling?
Oh, a power move? The Pope's saying he's the one giving the power, not just handing it over?
Like a chess game. The Pope's thinking ahead.
Adds to that Charlemagne-Church relationship. We talked about forced conversions. Interesting how he forced others to be Christian, but maybe the Pope outplayed him during the coronation. Who really had the upper hand?
That's the point. Secular power versus religious power. It's a constant battle throughout history. But Charlemagne wasn't just about power and war. He was a big supporter of learning and culture.
True. He wasn't just about a bigger empire, but making it civilized, you know? A real legacy.
This guy had skills. He sets up a school at his palace in Aachen. It becomes famous. Scholars all over want to go there. He pushes for the clergy to be educated. You need smart religious leaders.
And there's more. He makes the money standard, helps trade and the economy. People forget that part.
Right. And the Carolingian minuscule, that new way of writing. Not just a font, it's easier to read. Helps spread literacy. He's thinking big.
Impressive stuff. He gets it. Real power isn't just armies, it's smarts and culture, too.
Exactly. Strong empire needs a strong foundation. This idea of a unified smart West, it leads to the big question. Was Charlemagne the father of Europe?
Historians debate that all the time. What does Barbero say?
He admits, Charlemagne's empire didn't last long. Fell apart after he died.
Happens to a lot of empires, rise and fall, just echoes left behind.
But Barbero's point is, with Charlemagne, the idea of Europe and the West, they start to mean the same thing, both geographically and culturally.
So even if the empire was short, trying to make a unified West, that had a huge impact.
Like he planted a seed, the idea kept growing, kind of like how the Roman Empire influenced things long after IT was gone.
Exactly. Charlemagne's time might have been short, but it was full of ambition, fighting, and in the end, change.
Charlemagne's empire may have crumbled, but that ambition, to blend barbarian strength with Roman legacy, that really set the stage for, centuries of European history.
He kind of laid down this blueprint for a unified West.
Yeah.
And even though it didn't survive as it was, those ideas, they really stuck around and influenced rulers for a long time.
It makes you think, about all the ripple effects. Learning about dates and battles, that's one thing. But seeing how they shaped our world today, that's something else.
That's what makes Charlemagne so relevant, even now. He makes us think about ambition, about religion in society, about what it even means to be European.
Pretty big questions, even after all this time.
They really are.
So what can we take away from all this? What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
I hope they come away with a sense of, how complex history is and how much the past still shapes us.
Yeah.
Charlemagne's story, it reminds us that even the most powerful people, they're still products of their time. What they do can have effects that last for generations, even if they didn't mean for it to happen.
It's humbling. For those who want to learn more, any recommendations?
Oh, definitely. To really understand the man, check out Einhard's Life of Charlemagne.
Yeah.
He was a close advisor, so he gives us a first-hand look at Charlemagne, his personality, what he did. Primary sources are always the best place to start.
Makes sense.
And of course, there's the Song of Roland, that epic poem. Might not be completely accurate history, but it captures the legends, the stories that grew up around Charlemagne and those paladins. Kind of like King Arthur and his knights, but with a Carolingian spin.
I like it.
It reminds us that history can be fun. A&D teaches stuff. Charlemagne's a good example of that.
Well said. So, to wrap things up, here's a final thought. Charlemagne might not have had a lasting empire, but his vision of a unified West, that was part of what built modern Europe.
A legacy that still touches us today, maybe in ways we don't even realize.
Makes you wonder what Charlemagne would think if he could see Europe now.
That's a conversation I'd love to have.
Me too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.